The blood-red sunset painted the horizon as Hannah Blackwell's trembling hands clutched the torn edges of her dress. 3 days ago, she had been traveling with her family. Now she was the only one left to tell their story. The wagon train massacre had come without warning, leaving nothing but ash, blood, and a solitary survivor hidden beneath an overturned wagon. Montana Territory, 1876, had shown its most savage face to a 20-year-old woman who now had nowhere to call home. Hannah stumbled along the dusty trail, her once pristine blue dress now tattered and stained with dirt and the blood of those she had loved. Her blonde hair, usually neatly pinned, hung in tangled disarray around her gaunt face. 3 days without proper food or water had taken their toll. The vast emptiness of the Montana plains stretched before her, indifferent to her suffering. She hadn't cried since the attack. Something inside her had frozen over when she'd watched her parents and younger brother fall under the onslaught. The band of raiders had been swift and merciless, descending upon their small wagon train like shadows at dusk. Hannah had survived only by chance, knocked unconscious early in the attack and hidden beneath the canvas of their overturned wagon. When she had awakened, it was to a world of silence and smoke. The setting sun cast long shadows across the plains as Hannah's legs finally gave out. She collapsed to her knees, the last of her strength evaporating like morning dew. This was it. She would die here, alone, with no marker for her grave. Perhaps that was fitting. She would join her family in anonymity, another casualty of the untamed West, the thundering of hooves barely registered in her fading consciousness. Maybe the raiders had returned to finish what they'd started. Hannah couldn't find it in herself to care anymore. "Whoa there!" a deep voice called out, followed by the creak of leather as a rider dismounted. Miss, can you hear me?" Hannah felt strong hands gently turning her over, and she found herself staring into the most startlingly blue eyes she had ever seen. The man's face was sun-bronzed and weathered, framed by dark hair that curled slightly at the edges of his hat. Concern etched deep lines around his eyes and mouth. "Water," she croaked, her parched lips barely able to form the word. Without hesitation, the stranger brought a canteen to her lips, supporting her head as she drank greedily. "Easy now," he cautioned. "Too much at once will make you sick." Hannah coughed and sputtered but managed to swallow enough to bring some clarity back to her mind. "Thank you," she whispered. The stranger's eyes narrowed as he took in her appearance, the torn dress, the bruises, the hollow look of someone who had witnessed unspeakable horror. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice gentle but urgent. "Attack," Hannah managed. 3 days ago, our wagon train, everyone's gone." The man's jaw tightened and something dark flashed across his face. "Indians?" Hannah nodded weakly. "I hid under the wagon. They didn't see me." The stranger scanned the horizon, as if expecting danger to materialize from the gathering dusk. Then he made a decision, swift and certain. "My name's Quinn Garrison," he said, gathering her carefully into his arms. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles from here. We need to get you somewhere safe before nightfall." Hannah had no strength to protest as he lifted her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. His arms formed a protective cage around her as he took the reins. "You're safe now," Quinn said, his voice a rumble she could feel against her back. As he urged his horse forward, he made a promise that would change both their lives forever. "You'll never be alone again." Hannah wanted to believe him, but experience had taught her that promises were as fragile as the lives of those she had loved and lost. Still, as the rhythmic motion of the horse lulled her into a state between wakefulness and unconsciousness, she allowed herself to lean back against the solid warmth of the stranger who had found her at the edge of death. Quinn's ranch appeared on the horizon just as the last light faded from the sky. It wasn't grand, a modest main house, a barn and a few outbuildings, but to Hannah's eyes it looked like salvation. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, announcing their arrival. "Quinn, that you?" called an older man's voice as they approached. "It's me, Hank," Quinn replied, guiding his horse to the hitching post near the house. "Got a survivor here. She needs help." Hannah felt herself being lifted down from the horse, too weak to stand on her own. Through blurry eyes, she saw an older man with graying hair and a kind face hurrying toward them. "Good Lord," Hank muttered, taking in Hannah's condition. "What happened?" "Wagon train massacre. She's the only one who made it," Quinn explained tersely. "I need you to ride for Doc Wilson in Belmont. Tell him it's urgent." Hank nodded, already moving toward the barn. "I'll be back with him before midnight." Quinn carried Hannah into the house, kicking the door shut behind him. The interior was simple but clean, a main room with a stone fireplace, rough-hewn furniture, and a small kitchen area. He placed her gently on a bed in what appeared to be a guest room. "I'm going to get you some clean water and something to eat," he said. "Then I'll see about finding you something clean to wear." Hannah caught his sleeve weakly as he turned to go. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. Quinn looked down at her, something unreadable in his blue eyes. "Because out here we take care of our own," he said simply. "Rest now. You're safe." When he left the room, Hannah allowed her eyes to close. For the first time in 3 days, she didn't fear what would happen if she fell asleep. She awakened to soft lamplight and the sound of quiet conversation. A new face peered down at her, an older man with spectacles and a trim white beard. "Ah, she's awake," the man said, his voice gentle. "Miss, I'm Dr. Wilson from Belmont. I need to examine you if that's all right." Hannah nodded weakly. "Quinn, perhaps you and Hank should wait outside," the doctor suggested. Quinn hesitated, then nodded. "We'll be right outside if you need anything," he told Hannah before closing the door. The doctor's examination was thorough but gentle. He cleaned and bandaged her cuts, checked for broken bones, and gave her medicine for the fever that had begun to take hold. "You're suffering from exhaustion and exposure," he explained as he worked. "But you're young and strong. With proper rest and care, you'll recover." When he finished, he called Quinn and Hank back in. "She needs rest, plenty of fluids, and good food," Dr. Wilson instructed. "The fever concerns me, but the medicine should help. I'll return in 2 days to check on her progress." After the doctor left, Hannah managed to eat a few spoonfuls of the broth Quinn brought her before exhaustion claimed her again. This time, her sleep was deep and dreamless. Morning brought clarity, and with it, the full weight of what had happened. Hannah woke to find herself in a clean nightgown, her hair washed and combed. A middle-aged woman with a kind face was sitting in a chair by the window, mending a shirt. "Good morning, dear," the woman said, setting aside her sewing. "I'm Martha Wilson, the doctor's wife. I came by early to help get you cleaned up." "Thank you," Hannah whispered, her voice still raw. "Quinn told us what happened," Martha continued, pouring a glass of water from a pitcher beside the bed. "I'm so sorry for your loss." The simple acknowledgement broke something loose inside Hannah. Tears welled up and spilled over, and once they started, she couldn't stop them. Martha sat beside her on the bed and held her while she sobbed, releasing days of terror and grief. "That's it," Martha soothed, stroking Hannah's hair. "Let it out. You're safe now." When the storm of tears finally subsided, Hannah felt hollow but somehow lighter. Martha helped her sit up and drink some water. "Where is Mr. Garrison?" Hannah asked. "Quinn. He's been out since dawn, seeing to the ranch." "He's been checking on you every chance he gets, though," Martha replied with a small smile. "He was quite worried." Hannah didn't know what to make of that. "I need to thank him properly for saving my life." There'll be time for that, Martha assured her. For now, you need to focus on getting your strength back. Over the next few days, Hannah's body began to heal. She progressed from broth to solid food, from lying in bed to sitting up, and finally to taking short walks around the room. Quinn visited her daily, sometimes just for a few minutes, other times lingering to talk. She learned that he had come to Montana Territory 10 years earlier, after the Civil War had left him with scars both visible and hidden. He had worked as a ranch hand until saving enough to buy his own small spread. Hank had been with him from the beginning, an old friend of Quinn's father who had nowhere else to go. "What about you?" Quinn asked one evening as he sat beside her bed. "Where were you headed before?" Hannah looked down at her hands, twisted in the quilt. "My family and I were going to Belmont. My father had a cousin there who offered him work in his mercantile store." She swallowed hard. "We were from Pennsylvania originally. My father thought there would be more opportunities out west." Quinn's expression darkened. "I'm sorry. My parents, my brother Thomas, they're all gone," Hannah whispered. "I have no one left." Quinn reached out hesitantly, then covered her hand with his. "You have somewhere safe to stay for as long as you need it," he said firmly. "When you're well enough, we can see about getting word to any other family you might have back east." Hannah shook her head. "There's no one. My mother's family disowned her when she married my father, and his parents died years ago. The cousin in Belmont was his only living relative." "Then we'll figure something else out," Quinn promised. "For now, just focus on getting better." A week after Quinn had found her, Hannah was strong enough to join him and Hank for supper at the kitchen table. Martha had brought over a stew and fresh bread, and the simple meal was the most delicious thing Hannah had tasted in weeks. "Quinn tells me you were headed to Belmont," Hank said as they ate. "That's not far from here, just about 15 miles. "Yes," Hannah replied. "My father's cousin, Edward Blackwell, has a store there." Quinn and Hank exchanged glances. "Edward Blackwell," Quinn repeated. "Tall fellow, red hair going gray." Hannah nodded eagerly. "You know him?" "Everyone around these parts knows Ed," Hank said. "Good man, fair in his business dealings." Hope flared in Hannah's heart. "Then he's still there." "In Belmont, he is," Quinn confirmed. "When you're strong enough, I can take you to him." For the first time since the attack, Hannah felt a glimmer of possibility for her future. She wouldn't be completely alone in the world after all. But as the days passed and her strength returned, Hannah found herself oddly reluctant to leave the ranch. She had begun helping Martha with household tasks when the older woman visited, and had even started preparing simple meals for Quinn and Hank. The rhythm of life at the ranch was soothing, and the nightmares that had plagued her began to recede. 2 weeks after her arrival, Quinn found Hannah sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He settled into the chair beside her, his tall frame dwarfing the wooden seat. "Doc Wilson says you're well enough to travel now," he said, his eyes on the horizon. "I can take you to Belmont tomorrow if you'd like." Hannah's heart gave an unexpected lurch. "Oh, yes, I suppose I should go." Quinn turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "Unless you'd rather stay a while longer." The offer hung in the air between them, filled with unspoken meaning. Hannah studied his face, the strong line of his jaw, the tiny crinkles at the corners of his eyes, the scar that bisected his left eyebrow. In 2 short weeks, this man had become important to her in ways she couldn't quite articulate. "I wouldn't want to impose," she said carefully. Quinn's lips quirked in a half-smile. "It's no imposition. Truth be told, the place feels different with you here. Better." Heat rose to Hannah's cheeks. "I've enjoyed being here," she admitted. "But I should at least let my cousin know I survived. He might be worried when our wagon train never arrived." "Of course," Quinn agreed. "How about this? We'll ride to Belmont tomorrow. You can speak with your cousin, and then—" You can decide what you want to do next." Hannah nodded, feeling something ease in her chest. "That sounds reasonable." The next morning, Quinn helped Hannah up onto his second-best horse, a gentle mare named Daisy. Her borrowed dress, one of Martha's that had been hastily altered, was simple but clean, and her hair was neatly braided and pinned. She looked almost like her old self, except for the shadows that still lingered in her eyes. The ride to Belmont took most of the morning. Hannah had never seen the town before, and she found herself studying it with interest as they approached. It was larger than she had expected, a proper main street lined with businesses, side streets with homes of varying sizes, even a small church with a white steeple. The bustle of activity spoke of a prosperous community. Quinn led her to a two-story building with Blackwell Mercantile painted above the door in bold red letters. He helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "Ready?" he asked, his blue eyes searching her face. Hannah took a deep breath and nodded. Together they entered the store. The interior was well stocked and orderly, with shelves reaching to the ceiling filled with everything from tools to fabric to canned goods. A counter ran along the back wall, behind which stood a tall man with reddish-gray hair and a neatly trimmed beard. "Quinn Garrison," the man called out with a smile. "What brings you to town? Need supplies?" "Not today, Ed," Quinn replied, guiding Hannah forward with a gentle hand at her back. "I've brought someone to see you." Edward Blackwell's friendly expression turned to confusion as he looked at Hannah. Then, gradually, recognition dawned in his eyes. "Good Lord," he whispered. "You're Joseph's daughter, Hannah, isn't it?" Hannah nodded, tears springing to her eyes. "Yes, sir." "But where's the rest of your family?" Edward asked, coming around the counter. "We've been expecting you for weeks. I was about to send someone out looking for your wagon train." Quinn stepped forward. "There was an attack, Ed. Hannah is the only survivor." Edward's face paled. "An attack?" "Indians?" Hannah nodded, unable to speak as the memories threatened to overwhelm her. "She was hiding under an overturned wagon," Quinn explained quietly. "I found her collapsed on the trail about 2 weeks ago, brought her to my ranch to recover." Edward looked stricken. "Joseph, my cousin, and his wife and son, all gone," Hannah managed, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry." The older man moved forward and wrapped Hannah in a tight embrace. "Oh, my dear girl, I am so sorry." Hannah clung to him, this man who was her only remaining family, as her tears flowed freely. When she finally composed herself, Edward held her at arm's length, examining her face. "You look so much like your father," he said softly. "Same eyes." He turned to Quinn, extending his hand. "I can't thank you enough for saving her, Quinn. If there's ever anything I can do for you." Quinn shook the offered hand. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Edward said firmly. "Not everyone would have. Now Hannah must come stay with me and my wife. We have plenty of room, and Rebecca will be so glad to have another woman in the house. Our daughters are all grown and gone." Hannah glanced at Quinn, surprised by the reluctance she felt at the prospect of leaving him. "That's very kind of you, Cousin Edward." "It's the least we can do," Edward insisted. "Your family." Quinn cleared his throat. "Well, I should let you two get reacquainted. Hannah, I can come back for you later or whenever you're ready." The uncertainty in his voice matched the feeling in Hannah's heart. "Perhaps tomorrow," she suggested. "I'd like to meet Cousin Rebecca and decide what to do next." Quinn nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Tomorrow, then." "I'll be in town on business anyway." After Quinn left, Edward closed the store early and took Hannah to his home, a handsome 2-story house just off the main street. Rebecca Blackwell was a plump, kind-faced woman who wept openly when she heard Hannah's story and immediately set about making her comfortable. "You poor, dear child," she kept saying as she showed Hannah to a lovely guest room. to have endured such horror alone. That night, over a dinner far more elaborate than anything Hannah had eaten in weeks, Edward and Rebecca told her about their life in Belmont. They had 3 daughters, all married and living in different parts of Montana Territory. Edward had been running the mercantile for 15 years and had prospered as the town grew. "Your father would have been my partner," Edward explained sadly. "We had it all planned out." "What will you do now, dear?" Rebecca asked gently. Hannah set down her fork, considering. "I'm not sure. I have some education I could perhaps teach or work in a store." "You'll do no such thing," Edward said firmly. "You'll stay with us, of course. Your family, and we have more than enough." Hannah was touched by their generosity, but something held her back from accepting immediately. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to be a burden." "Nonsense," Rebecca insisted. "We'd love to have you." Later, as Hannah lay in the comfortable bed in the guest room, she found her thoughts returning to Quinn. The Blackwells' home was lovely, and they were kind people who genuinely wanted to help her. It would be the sensible choice to stay with them, to rebuild her life in Belmont where she had family connections. Yet when she closed her eyes, it was Quinn's face she saw, his blue eyes watching her with that mixture of concern and something deeper, something that made her heart beat faster. At his ranch, despite her grief, she had felt a sense of purpose, of belonging. Mourning brought no clarity. Hannah dressed in a gown Rebecca had given her one of her daughters that had been left behind and went downstairs to find her cousins already at breakfast. "Quinn Garrison came by the store first thing," Edward mentioned casually as Hannah took a seat. "Asked after you." Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Oh," Rebecca and Edward exchanged knowing glances. "He's a good man," Edward said. "One of the most respected ranchers in the area, despite his modest spread. Fought in the war, came west to start fresh." "I've heard he keeps to himself mostly," Rebecca added. "So it's rather interesting that he's taken such an interest in your welfare." Hannah busied herself with buttering a piece of toast. "He saved my life. I suppose he feels responsible for me." "Perhaps," Edward said, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Or perhaps there's more to it than that." After breakfast, Hannah helped Rebecca with the dishes, then accompanied Edward to the store. She was standing behind the counter, learning how the ledger system worked, when the bell above the door jangled and Quinn walked in. Hannah's heart gave a ridiculous little leap at the sight of him. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance. His dark hair was neatly combed, his shirt clean and pressed, his boots polished. "Morning, Ed," he greeted. Then his eyes found Hannah. "Miss Blackwell." The formality made her smile. "Mr. Garrison." Edward looked between them, amusement evident in his expression. "Quinn, did you need something from the store?" "Actually," Quinn said, clearing his throat, "I was wondering if Miss Blackwell might join me for lunch at the hotel restaurant." "If that's acceptable to you, of course." Edward waved a hand. "Hannah is a grown woman. She can make her own decisions." Quinn looked to her expectantly, and Hannah found herself nodding. "I would be pleased to join you, Mr. Garrison." Edward winked at her when Quinn wasn't looking. "Take your time, dear. The store won't fall apart without you for an hour or two." The hotel restaurant was the nicest establishment in Belmont, with white tablecloths and real china. Quinn pulled out Hannah's chair for her before taking his own seat across the small table. "You look well," he said once they were settled. "The dress suits you." "Thank you," Hannah replied, smoothing the blue fabric self-consciously. "It was kind of Cousin Rebecca to give it to me." "Have they been good to you?" Quinn asked, his expression serious. "Very. They've insisted I stay with them permanently." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes, disappointment, perhaps. "That's generous of them." "It is," Hannah agreed. "They're my only family now." A waiter came to take their order, providing a momentary respite from the conversation that seemed to be circling something neither of them was quite ready to address. When they were alone again, Quinn leaned forward slightly. "Have you decided about staying in Belmont?" Hannah met his gaze steadily. "I'm not sure yet. It would be the sensible choice." "Sensible," Quinn repeated, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Yes, I suppose it would be. But—" Hannah hesitated, then found her courage. "I find myself thinking about your ranch quite often. About the peace I found there, even in the midst of my grief." Quinn's expression softened. "The ranch has felt empty since you left. Even Hank noticed. Said the place lost its light." The simple honesty of his words touched something deep within Hannah. "Mr. Garrison, Quinn, what exactly are you asking me?" Quinn took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. "I'm asking if you might consider another option, one that's perhaps less sensible but could bring happiness to both of us." Hannah's heart pounded in her chest. "And what option is that?" "Come back to the ranch," Quinn said softly. "Not as a guest this time, but as someone with a permanent place there, someone who belongs." "Are you proposing a position?" Hannah asked, needing clarity. "As a housekeeper, perhaps." Quinn's cheeks reddened slightly. "No, that's not I mean." He stopped, collected himself, and started again. "Hannah, in the short time I've known you, I've come to admire you greatly. Your strength, your kindness, your resilience. I know it's sudden, and I know you're still grieving, but I find myself drawn to you in ways I never expected." Hannah stared at him, barely daring to breathe. "I'm not asking for anything right away," Quinn continued hurriedly. "Just come back to the ranch. Let us get to know each other better. And perhaps in time, if you find you could care for me as I already care for you." "You care for me?" Hannah whispered. Quinn reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "More than I thought possible in such a short time. When I found you on that trail, something changed for me. I made you a promise that you'd never be alone again, and I meant it not just as a momentary comfort, but as a vow." Hannah turned her hand beneath his so their palms met, fingers intertwining. "I've never met anyone like you, Quinn Garrison. Is that good or bad?" he asked, a smile tugging at his lips. "Good," Hannah assured him. "Definitely good." The rest of their lunch passed in conversation that flowed more easily now that the unspoken tension between them had been addressed. Quinn told her more about his plans for the ranch, expanding the herd, possibly building a larger house in the coming year. Hannah shared memories of her family, finding that speaking of them brought more comfort than pain now. When they returned to the mercantile, Edward took one look at their faces and nodded knowingly. "I see lunch went well," he commented. Quinn cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwell, I've asked Hannah to consider returning to my ranch, not as a guest, but with the possibility of a more permanent arrangement in the future, with your blessing, of course." Edward's eyebrows rose. "That's rather quick, isn't it?" "It is," Quinn acknowledged. "And I'm not rushing anything, just offering a possibility." Edward turned to Hannah. "And what do you think about this possibility, my dear?" Hannah met her cousin's gaze steadily. "I think I'd like to explore it." Edward studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Your father would want you to find happiness wherever that might be." He extended his hand to Quinn. "You have my blessing to court my cousin, Mr. Garrison, but I expect regular visits so we can see how she's faring." Quinn shook his hand firmly. "You have my word." That evening, over dinner at the Blackwell's house, they discussed the arrangement. Hannah would return to Quinn's ranch, but with certain conditions that would protect her reputation. Martha Wilson would visit regularly as a sort of chaperone, and Hannah would come to town at least once a week to see her cousins. "And if this courtship doesn't lead where you both hope?" Rebecca asked pragmatically. "Then Hannah will always have a home with you," Quinn answered without hesitation. "I would never leave her without options." 2 days later, Hannah rode back to Quinn's ranch, her few possessions and several new ones gifted by the Blackwells packed in saddlebags. The familiar sight of the modest house and barn brought an unexpected feeling of homecoming that caught her by surprise. Hank was waiting on the porch, a broad smile breaking across his weathered face. "Welcome back, Miss Hannah. The place hasn't been the same without you." Quinn helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "Welcome home," he said softly, for her ears alone. The word home resonated within her. It had been less than a month since she had lost everything: her family, her past, her planned future. Yet somehow, against all odds, she had found something new, something unexpected but precious. "It's good to be home," she replied and meant it. The weeks that followed took on a rhythm of their own. Hannah gradually assumed responsibility for running the household, while Quinn and Hank taught her about ranch operations. She learned to ride better, to help with the cattle, even to shoot a rifle, a skill Quinn insisted she master. "The territory can be dangerous," he explained as they practiced with tin cans set on fence posts. "I need to know you can protect yourself if I'm not around." Hannah found she had a natural aptitude for shooting, much to Quinn's admiration and Hank's amusement. "She's a better shot than you were when you first came west," Hank teased Quinn after Hannah hit 5 cans in a row. Their courtship progressed with a mixture of traditional gestures and practical partnership. Quinn brought her wildflowers he'd gathered while checking the fences. Hannah mended his shirts with careful stitches. They worked side by side during the day and talked for hours on the porch in the evenings, learning each other's stories, hopes, and fears. Martha Wilson visited twice a week, bringing news from town and serving as the promised chaperone. She watched the budding relationship with approval. "I haven't seen Quinn this happy in all the years I've known him," she confided to Hannah one afternoon as they prepared dinner together. "You've brought light back into his life." "He's done the same for me," Hannah admitted. "When he found me, I thought my life was over. Now I can see a future again." That future became clearer with each passing day. A month after Hannah had returned to the ranch, Quinn took her on a picnic by a small stream that ran through his property. The late summer day was perfect warm sunshine, a gentle breeze, and wildflowers dotting the grass. After they had eaten, Quinn reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. "I've been carrying this around for a week," he admitted, turning the box over in his hands, waiting for the right moment. Hannah's heart began to race as she realized what was happening. Quinn opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small pearl. "It's not fancy," he said apologetically, "but the pearl reminded me of your strength, something beautiful created through hardship." He took her hand, his blue eyes earnest and vulnerable. "Hannah Blackwell, I know we've known each other a short time by some standards, but out here, life teaches us not to waste precious days. I love you. I think I began loving you the moment I found you on that trail, not out of pity or obligation, but because I saw your courage even then. Will you marry me? Be my partner, my heart, my home." Tears filled Hannah's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Quinn, I'll marry you." The kiss they shared sealed their promise, tender at first, then deepening with the emotion that had been building between them. When they finally drew apart, both were smiling. "When?" Quinn asked, sliding the ring onto her finger. "How soon can you be Mrs. Garrison?" Hannah considered. "I'd like Cousin Edward to give me away, and we should have a proper ceremony in the church in Belmont." Quinn nodded. "Whatever you want. This fall, before winter sets in." "October," Hannah decided. "When the leaves have turned, a new season for a new beginning." They rode into Belmont the next day to share their news. Edward and Rebecca were delighted, immediately offering to host the wedding reception at their home. We'll need to order your dress right away, Rebecca fussed. And invitations must be sent. Oh, there's so much to plan. Hannah found herself swept up in preparations. The simple wedding she had envisioned grew slightly as the Blackwells insisted on including the town's leading citizens. Quinn took it all in stride, his main concern being that Hannah was happy. "Just tell me when to show up and what to wear," he told her with a grin when she apologized for the expanding guest list. As the weeks passed, and autumn painted the Montana landscape in golds and reds, Hannah's happiness was tempered only by the absence of her family. The night before the wedding, she confessed this to Quinn as they sat on the porch of what would soon be their home. "I wish they could be there tomorrow," she said softly. "My parents would have loved you." Quinn put his arm around her, drawing her close. "They'll be there in spirit. And someday, we'll tell our children about their grandparents, how brave they were to come west, how much they loved their daughter." Hannah looked up at him, touched by his understanding. "Our children?" Quinn smiled. "I hope for at least 2 or 3. Little ones with your courage and maybe my stubbornness." The image warmed Hannah's heart. "I'd like that. A family of our own." The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, perfect October weather. Hannah dressed in the Blackwells' home, helped by Rebecca and several ladies from town. Her gown was ivory satin with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, simple but elegant. "You look beautiful," Rebecca said, adjusting the small wreath of autumn flowers in Hannah's hair. Like a vision. Edward appeared at the door, resplendent in his Sunday best. "It's time," he said, offering his arm. Quinn's waiting at the church, looking nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Hannah laughed, taking his arm. "Then we shouldn't keep him waiting." The small church was filled to capacity, fragrant with autumn flowers and buzzing with excited whispers that fell silent as Hannah appeared at the door. She saw nothing but Quinn, standing tall at the altar, his eyes finding hers and lighting up with love that took her breath away. Edward squeezed her hand as they reached the altar. "Joseph would be proud," he whispered before placing her hand in Quinn's. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises to stand together through all of life's joys and sorrows. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn's kiss was both gentle and promising, bringing a blush to Hannah's cheeks and a cheer from the assembled guests. The reception at the Blackwells' home lasted well into the evening. There was dancing in the cleared parlor, abundant food, and plenty of well wishes for the new couple. As the celebration wound down, Quinn leaned close to his new wife. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Garrison?" he murmured. The title sent a thrill through Hannah. "Yes," she replied. "Take me home." Their first night as husband and wife was a discovery of tenderness and passion that left Hannah breathless. Quinn was gentle, mindful of her inexperience, and by morning, she knew that the bond between them had deepened into something unbreakable. Life settled into a new rhythm as autumn gave way to winter. The ranch required constant attention, and Hannah proved herself a capable partner, learning quickly and working alongside Quinn with determination and enthusiasm. Their evenings were spent in comfortable companionship, reading by the fire, planning for the future, and loving each other with growing confidence. When spring arrived, bringing new calves to the herd and wildflowers to the prairie, Hannah had news of her own. "Quinn," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, "I need to tell you something." He turned to her, concern flickering across his features. "Is everything all right?" Hannah took his hand and placed it over her still flat stomach. "Everything is wonderful. We're going to have a baby." Quinn's expression transformed from concern to wonder in an instant. "A baby? You're certain?" Hannah nodded, smiling at his reaction. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday when I was in town. He says the baby should arrive in late autumn." Quinn pulled her into his arms, his joy evident in the way he held her gently but securely, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "A family," he whispered against her hair. "Our family." The months that followed were filled with preparations. Quinn expanded the house, adding another bedroom and enlarging the kitchen. Hannah sewed baby clothes in the evenings, and their conversations often turned to names and hopes for their child's future. Edward and Rebecca visited often, bringing gifts for the baby and staying for a day or two each time. Even Hank, gruff as he was, could be seen carving a small wooden horse when he thought no one was looking. As Hannah's body changed, Quinn's protectiveness increased. He insisted she rest more, took over many of her chores, and watched her with a mixture of awe and anxiety that made her both touched and exasperated. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him one day when he refused to let her help gather eggs. Quinn kissed her forehead. "Humor me. I've never had so much to lose before." The words reminded Hannah of all they had overcome to find each other. "Neither have I," she acknowledged softly. October brought brilliant colors to the landscape once again, marking a year since their wedding. Hannah's time was drawing near, and the baby was active, kicking and shifting as if impatient to join the world. "Another Garrison eager to work the land," Quinn joked as he felt the movements beneath his hand. The labor began on a stormy night, wind howling around the corners of the house like a wild thing. Hank rode for Dr. Wilson while Quinn stayed by Hannah's side, his face pale but determined as he held her hand through each contraction. "You'll never be alone again," he reminded her as the pain intensified. "I'm right here, always." The doctor arrived just in time. After hours of labor that tested Hannah's strength to its limits, their son was born as dawn broke through the storm clouds, a robust boy with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would later turn blue like his father's. "He's perfect," Quinn whispered, cradling the tiny form with hands that trembled slightly. "Hannah, he's absolutely perfect." They named him Joseph Edward Garrison, honoring both Hannah's father and her cousin who had become like a second father to her. As Hannah watched Quinn with their son, she felt a completion of the circle that had begun that terrible day on the trail when she thought her life was ending. Instead, it had been beginning. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under Quinn and Hannah's careful management. Little Joseph Joey, to everyone but his grandmother Rebecca, grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's charm and his mother's determination. 2 years after Joey's birth, Hannah gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named William Henry and Rebecca Martha. The house expanded again to accommodate the growing family, and Hank officially became Uncle Hank to the children who followed him around the ranch like ducklings. 5 years into their marriage, tragedy struck when a particularly harsh winter brought illness to the territory. Edward Blackwell fell victim to pneumonia, leaving Rebecca a widow. Without hesitation, Quinn and Hannah invited her to live with them. "Your family," Hannah told her cousin through tears, "and family takes care of each other." Rebecca became an integral part of their household, helping with the children and bringing her own warmth and wisdom to the ranch. Her presence was especially valuable when Hannah's 4th pregnancy proved difficult, requiring her to rest for months before delivering a healthy daughter they named Grace. Through it all, the births and the one heartbreaking miscarriage, the good years and the lean ones, the joys and sorrows that made up the tapestry of their life together, Quinn and Hannah's love remained the foundation upon which everything else was built. On the 10th anniversary of the day Quinn had found Hannah, they rode together to the spot where their paths had first crossed. The landscape had changed little. The vast Montana sky still arched overhead. The prairie grass still rippled in the breeze. "I was dying here," Hannah said softly as they dismounted, "and you brought me back to life." Quinn took her hand, his touch as familiar and necessary to her now as breathing. "We saved each other, I think." Hannah thought of their 4 children waiting at home with Rebecca and Hank, of the thriving ranch that was their legacy, of the love that had grown between them deeper and richer with each passing year. "You remember what you said to me that day?" she asked. Quinn nodded, drawing her into his arms. "I promised you'd never be alone again." "And I never have been," Hannah whispered against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Not for a single moment." As they stood together where their story had begun, Hannah Blackwell Garrison knew with absolute certainty that some promises were meant to be kept forever. And Quinn's promise to her had been the beginning of everything. "I love you," she told him, the words as true now as they had been the first time she'd spoken them. "And I love you," Quinn replied, kissing her with the tenderness that still made her heart skip. "Always have, always will." They rode home as the sun began to set, back to the life they had built together from the ashes of tragedy, a life filled with love, family, and the certainty that whatever the future held, they would face it as they had faced everything else, together. And in the end, that was all that mattered.